All right, so we're going to first talk about perfect squares. The square of any integer is called a perfect square. So anytime you square an integer, it's called a perfect square. So if I ask you for a list of perfect squares, you don't have to memorize this list. It's good to memorize some of them. But all you need to do is take your calculator and square these numbers. So let's come up with a list of perfect squares all the way up to 10 squared, okay? What happens if I take 1 squared?
It'd be 1.
It would be 1. Thank you. Now remember, when you square something, it's repeated multiplication, right? So that was 1 times 1, which gave us 1. 2 squared is 2 times 2, yeah.
Can I use the restroom? 4.
What do you get for an answer, though?
2 times 2, 4.
4, yeah.
No,
Yes, you can use the restroom.
Say the answer didn't go through.
Yes.
What time is the properly do it?
Okay, what's 3 squared?
6. 9.
Careful, because that was 3 plus 3. We're doing 3 times 3. We get out 9. And remember, hey, you guys can put those in your calculator, right? If you're ever not certain, just plug in 4 times 4. Do 4. Is it bad here? I think this kind of got shifted. Let's see if we can move these over. They just slowly get shifted as the day kind of goes on. They're supposed to be like that.
Oh, that's better.
Is that better? Okay. Do you want to use... If you're good, you're good. Okay. Hey, too many people talking. 4 times 4. 16. 5 times 5. 25. 6 squared. 36. 7 squared. 49. 8 squared. 64. 9 squared. 81. 10 squared. 100. Now, like I said, it's good to have some of those memorized, but I'm not requiring it because if you have a calculator and a second on the test, can't you just put this on the top? We could just make that whole list of perfect squares on the top and be set for everything else. Now, the whole point of coming up with these perfect squares is actually to get to this term here, square roots. Square roots are very important to us. And like I said, maybe some of us haven't seen these yet. All right, we learned about exponents, right? We talked about squaring things today. The opposite of squaring a number, is finding the square root. Think about it like addition and subtraction. If I need to undo addition, I use subtraction. So if I want to undo squaring something, I take the square root of it. Now, some interesting tweaks about when you take the square root of it. Positive numbers have 2 possible square roots. Why? And this gets us back to a fact that we haven't talked about a while because we had to skip it for that thing. Hey, thank you. What's 2 squared? 4. We're okay with that, right? What's negative 2 squared?
Negative 4.
Ooh.
2. No, 4.
What's negative 2 times negative 2?
Oh, 4. Positive 4.
A positive 4. So let's go through that one more time. What's 2 squared?
2.
Don't just yell out. What's 2 squared?
4.
4. What's negative 2 squared?
4. Negative
4. Ooh, let's do it again. What's negative 2 times negative 2?
4. No, negative 4.
No. Hang on. Let's take a second here. What happens when we have a negative times a negative?
Positive.
It's a positive. Do you agree with that, Ethan? So what's a negative 2 times a negative 2? No, I'm sticking with Ethan right now.
Ethan, are you sure you're calculating?
No, it's okay. Ethan,
Why?
Ethan, just look at me.
I'm not. Oh, I'm doing
Ethan,
my nose.
Ethan, just look at me.
Oh.
Okay, let's pay attention to me. What's 2 times 2?
4.
What's negative 2 times negative 2?
4.
4 as well. Okay. So when you square a negative, it turns positive. So what numbers can you square together to give me 16? What's one number that I can go, this times this equals 16? The same number, sorry. 4. 4 times 4 is 16. What's the other number that would get you 16 if you square it? 8 times 8 would be 64, though. 2 times 2 would be 4. It's not just 4. There's another one.
-4.
And -4, because -4 times -4 is 16. Negative numbers. Negative numbers have 0 square roots. You cannot take the square root of a negative number. So if I ask you the square root of -4, you say I can't do it. Because there's no number multiplied by itself that will give you a negative number. Because -4 times -4 equals a positive 16. I can't take the square root of -16. What number has only one square root? 1. The square root of 1 could be 1 or -1. So I already said negative numbers, you can't take the square root of. Positives have 2. What's the only number that's not a positive and not a negative? 0. What's the square root of 0? Well, it's just 0. There's no plus or minus in front of it, so it's just 0. All right, radical notation. The radical sign square root of x is used to indicate the square root of x. This is the symbol we're using today. This square root symbol right here is the one we're using today. Square root of x is to indicate. We are indicating, if I have just 8, notice there's no sign in front of it. That means we're talking about the positive square root. And don't get bogged down with the positive or negative. I think you'll get just fine with it. If I put a negative in front of it, I want the negative answer of it. So we have our positive and we have our negative. All right, square roots do the opposite of squaring, okay? Is 49 a perfect square?
Yes.
Is it on our list that's up there? Well,
No.
it's not?
Yes, it is.
It's 7. No, 7.
What did I use to get what did I use to get 49 9?
7 squared.
Yeah. Are you stretching? So what number did we start with to get to 49?
7 squared.
We started with 7, we squared it, and we got 49. Square roots do the opposite. You start with 49, and the square root is actually going to be 7.
I knew that.
Did you guys hear that? Yeah. Okay. So, the square root of 49 equals 7 because 7 squared equals 49. Hey guys, let's look up here real quick. Let's look at another way to write this. I'm not going to write it every single time, but I want us to think about this. Do you agree that 7 squared equals 49?
Yes.
So what we're really doing is we're saying, oh, this is the square root of 7 squared. Your square root and your square cancel out, and that's really why our answer is 7. That's what's happening. We just have to rewrite that 49 to understand what we're squaring to get it. And the square root and the square cancel each other out. Campbell, you good with that? That's very, very important. I don't care if you have all these numbers and you've done this before. I know seniors that don't know this skill. That they don't understand that square roots and squares cancel each other out. If you can master that in 8th grade, your math career is going to be a lot easier when you get to things like square roots. Yeah. Why do they cancel? So that's how they're actually designed to work. Kind of like if I give you plus 3, right? What does negative 3 do to your plus 3? It subtracts from it and undoes it, right? So they're designed to be inverses, to do the opposite of what 1 does. So if 7 squared gives me 49, the square root's going to give me back to 7. It undoes what squaring does. Does that make a little more sense? So this is going to be really important when we start solving equations, that you understand that square roots and squares are inverses or opposites of each other. Can we pay attention to what I'm saying? That they are opposites of each other. That's going to be really important when we start solving for variables. Because you need to know, oh, if I have a square root, a square will get rid of it. If I have a square root will get rid of it. That's really, really important. All right, is 9 a perfect square?
Yes.
Okay, so what would the square root of 9 be? Yes,
3.
it would be 3. Be careful here because we have that negative sign on the outside, right? So our answer better remain negative. Let's make sure we're not playing on our smart, otherwise that'll make us take them off, okay? What's the square root of 4?
It's -2.
2. Yeah, so our answer is -2. Does our calculators have a square root button?
Yes.
Yeah, so if we mess up, we can just always look at that stuff. All right,
17.
not just 17, but
-17.
-17. Are we okay with -17?
Is there,
Did we have that on our list? Was 289 on our list of perfect squares?
No.
No. So what did we do?
It's a non-perfect square.
We put it in our calculator. It is a perfect square. It's 17 times. Try 17 times 17 with me.
Okay. Got it.
Equals 189 or 289. So this is a perfect square. We just didn't, I'm not going to make you do a list up to like 20. So at this stage, we just plug in our calculator. For people that are borrowing my calculators, can you find those buttons? You found the square root button? Okay. All right, what's negative square root of 196? Go.
-14.
-14. Can I get a second on -14?
Yes.
We got a second? We're okay with -14? Cool. What's the square root of 484?
22.
22.
22. I heard 2 people say it. Can someone over here confirm?
22.
Confirm? Are you not finding your button? Oh, you have? Okay, I thought you were just like, oh.
Yes.
Sorry, I thought you gave me one of these. I don't know. You're good? Okay. All right. Ooh,
1/4. 1/4.
nice. Did your calculator spit out 1/4?
I found it out.
You found it out? Awesome job. Hey guys.
Where's the square root button?
Where's the button on this?
It's right here. So we're going to hit second, and then it'll be right there. Same thing for you. Yours is buried right here. So we have to hit second, and then x squared. Yep, because x squared and square roots are opposite each other, so they put them in the same place. All right, ears. Ears. All right. I don't want you to plug this in your calculator, square root of 1/16. It might give you a decimal.
It gave me 2.
If it give you 1/4, then it works. But, hang on. Let's pretend we don't have a calculator. It gives us this, and it gives us our decimal. I want us to realize something if we have a fraction. Notice we have a square root over the whole thing. And I want us to put this in our notes, that we could turn this into the square root of 1 over the square root of 16. You need to know that. I know you're like, my calculator does it, but a lot of calculators, graphing calculators will not. They'll give you a decimal. Okay, what's the square root of 1? 1. What's the square root of 16?
4.
It gives us our 1/4.
Oh my god.
All right, can someone help me rewrite this one? My calculator gives me a decimal if I plug this in. How do I rewrite this, Waddle? Waddell, sorry.
You do 81 plus 30.
Huh?
What? Right.
Say that again?
We do 81.
Shh.
You know what? You do 1.
Shh, I'm sorry. There's too many people talking.
You do 1 over 16.
1 over 16? Oh, that's what we did here.
So you do 81 over 16? I mean, 81 over 5.
Yeah, we still want the 81, but what we're going to do is we're going to rewrite it as the square root of 81 over the square root of 25. So we'll take the square root of the numerator, we'll take the square root of the denominator. We take the square root of each bit individually. What is the square root of 81? 9. So we have negative 9. What's the square root of 25? 5. So we have negative 9 over 5. Our next one will have the square root of 49 over the square root of 144. Campbell.
Oh, can I do it?
Sure.
Can I say the square root for both of them?
Yeah.
It's 7 and 12.
7 over 12. Do we get a second on 7 over 12? We're good with that?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is us using perfect squares, right?
I like this.
Waddell, last warning.
Oh, go on my next calculator.
I can check my notes.
Okay. Shh. Perfect versus non-perfect. I want you to circle each value that is a perfect square. Remember, if it's not in our list, we might have to plug it in our calculator. If it comes out to a decimal, it's not a perfect square. If it comes out to an even number, it is a perfect square. So we circle it. Type in square root of 32 in our calculator.
So this one, so
Type it in your calculator. Don't be lazy. What does it come out to?
5.6568.
Right.
49.
So it's got some decimals, right? So that's not going to work. What's the square root of 50 if I type in my calculator? Campbell, can you do this with us?
what is it?
What do you get?
Oh, yours is 5 square root of 2, so that's where. So yours are pumping out exact values. I forget where our decimal thing is on here. Yeah, but that basically tells you it's a decimal.
Okay.
Okay?
All right.
Yeah. All right, when we type in square root of 121, what do we get out?
11.
We get 11. Does that work?
Yes.
Yeah. 1 we should just know, right? Square root of 1 is 1. 160, Campbell. Campbell. We're doing stuff together. What's the square root of 160? If I type that in my calculator, what do I get if I do the square root of 160?
I got 12.6491111.
Okay, that's far enough. Did we get 12 point something, something, something?
Yeah.
Okay, so that doesn't work. What's the square root of 64 if I type in my calculator? 8. What's the square root of 200 if I plug it in my calculator?
14.14.
14.14. So does 200 work?
No.
For back group, does 200 work? Did you get rid of it? Because you had 200. Okay. Does 324 work?
Yes.
Yes. It can be that easy or it can be really difficult on the quiz or test. You just have to plug in your calculator and check it. All right, so we talked about perfect squares, right? They come out to whole numbers. What if they don't? What if they don't? What we're going to do now is we're going to estimate non-perfect squares. We're going to estimate non-perfect squares by plugging them in our calculator. This says we're supposed to identify the 2 consecutive integers in which the square root lies between. So what I want us to do is I want us to type in square root of 10. We're going to have to, just 1 second.